Well, good evening. This is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 18th of June, and that is a Monday evening. So, I'm going to read you a little story here. This is the Phoenix disaster was predictable and avoidable. For those of you who don't know, the Phoenix program is a payroll program that the federal government purchased for around about $350 million. It has never really worked properly, and they put in something like $500 million in repairs and upgrades so far to try and get this thing online, but it has resulted in many civil servants getting more than they should be paid, or less than they should be paid, or no paychecks at all. And the reason I'm going to read you the whole story is it's not a very long article. It's by David Hutton, and David Hutton is a senior fellow at the Center for Free Expression at Ryerson University. The reason I'm reading it to you is because this is going on all over the civil service, whether it be provincially, federally, or municipally. These people are just so arrogant, it is unbelievable. And they create their own problems. And again, another reason why I wanted to go through this is because the three main civil servants who are being fingered in this, firstly, have not lost their jobs, although they didn't get a performance bonus. A performance bonus. But they have just, two of them have been relocated, and that is about it. So you can't get rid of these people. But they tried to blame the minister for creating a toxic workplace atmosphere where whistleblowing and coming forward with errors was not looked upon in a good light. Anyway, take a listen. Federal Auditor General Michael Ferguson's scathing report on the Phoenix Pay Project reveals that far from being an accident, this disaster was manufactured. The project was set up for failure from the start. This process began in 2012 with a big lie, that the project could be completed successfully with about half the budget that the contractor had estimated to be necessary. The magic was to be achieved by removing 100 functions from the product, including many that proved later to be vital, slashing the development staff, reducing the testing, and compressing the schedule. IT professionals have a saying for this approach: if the product doesn't have to work, we can meet any budget and any schedule. Once told, the big lie had to be sustained, and the executives in charge of the Phoenix boldly and successfully kept this up for years, until the truth couldn't be hidden anymore. They achieved this by seizing control of all the supposedly mandatory oversight mechanisms, such as independent reviews and audits, and keeping their superiors in the dark. Mr. Ferguson's report states categorically that there was no oversight, zero oversight. In 2015, shortly before the fateful decision to launch the rollouts, the Phoenix executives received an independent report commissioned by the Treasury Board which raised a number of serious concerns, including incomplete testing and uncorrected errors, the likelihood of high call volumes, the short timelines, and lack of contingency plans. This report was not even shown to the minister responsible, so the massive rollout went ahead with only partial function, incomplete test results, no fallback, and no contingency plan. The result was entirely predictable. Although Phoenix executives managed to hobble the normal oversight mechanisms, there was one more mechanism outside of their control that could have prevented this disaster, even though everything else had failed: the federal whistleblowing system. In other countries, this type of system has proven highly effective at exposing even massive frauds that powerful vested interests were desperate to conceal. But the Phoenix executives didn't have to hobble the whistleblower system. The government had already done this for them. Created in 2007, the system is supposed to work as follows. Honest employees who see evidence of misconduct go to the Integrity Commissioner, who is an officer of Parliament like the Auditor General. Confident that they will be protected from reprisals, the Integrity Commissioner conducts an independent investigation into these allegations, with all the considerable powers of the Inquiries Act at his disposal. If wrongdoing is found, the Commissioner reports his findings, which are public, directly to Parliament. One can only imagine what such a report would have done to the big lie, and how quickly the axe would have fallen on this troubled project and its perpetrators. Unfortunately, this could not happen because our federal whistleblower protection system simply doesn't work, and everybody in Ottawa knows it. We have a deeply flawed law, unchanged for 11 years, and a succession of integrity commissioners who, far from being protectors, have proven to be a whistleblower's worst nightmare, since they rarely investigate anything, and no whistleblower has ever prevailed at the tribunal that is supposed to compensate them for reprisals they have suffered. In 2017, the government asked a parliamentary committee to review the system. Shocked at the dysfunction they found, the members unanimously recommended sweeping changes, but the government's response was to give the committee the brush off. None of the recommendations were implemented. In general, there's no lack of honest public servants willing to come forward and expose fiascos such as we just experienced with Phoenix, but under the current system they would never have a chance. Since the government seemed determined not to help whistleblowers, even after this debacle, Ryerson Centre for Free Expression is doing what civil society has done in other countries. We are going to help them ourselves. We are setting up a free confidential advice centre that they can go to for help, which we expect to be staffed and operation by the fall. We have also decided to conduct our own investigation of the Phoenix project to find out what happened to those honest employees who tried to blow the whistle, and to learn how others were deterred from speaking out at all. And this goes on all the time. We have found absolutely howling errors in the municipality and their budgets and their auditing, but we have been turned down for freedom of information requests. Our questions have gone unanswered, and we are still a year later waiting to receive the information that should be freely open to the public. So again, we have to pay attention. This is costing you millions of dollars. There's been nearly $1 billion spent on the Phoenix project, and I will guarantee you that they will end up scrapping the whole thing and repurchasing another program for about $350 million. And the astounding thing is that you have corporations like Bell, like IBM, like Microsoft, who have massive, Google, Amazon, massive employees, massive number of employees, and their payroll systems work. Why could you not go to one of these companies and buy one of their systems that's already up, running, functioning? You know what you're going to get, and it's already been troubleshot, all the bugs have been worked out of it. But no, our senior civil servants, with their hubris, would not do anything of the sort. And next story. Here we have a word that I coined many moons ago, shrinkflation. There you go. This is when you open a bag of chips and you find it's only half full, the bag is the same size, and the price is the same size. This is another way of compensating for inflation. And I think I've mentioned this before, but whenever I hear a politician spouting, as we did in the most recent provincial election, about taxes, about saving money for the people, about reducing costs, about increasing borrowing, all kinds of promises and favours, and they're not talking about inflation or the root cause of inflation, I know that I'm listening to somebody who really doesn't understand what the problem is. And here we go, tied to this article. If Canada wants to help the poor, it needs a new measure of poverty. Okay, so here we have, instead of actually helping the poor, we are going to have a new measure of poverty. So we know exactly what that means to be poor. I mean, come on. Can we waste any more money on these projects, these never-ending? We know why the poor are poor, because they have a negative cash flow and they're being subjected to shrinkflation every day of the week. That's why we have poor people. Accommodation, the cost of accommodation is going through the roof, and people's incomes are not keeping up with inflation. We don't need another measurement for the poor. What we need to do is to stop inflation, and that can be quite easily done by repatriating the Bank of Canada. It's the only publicly owned central bank in the world, and Mr. Morneau holds all of the shares, 100% of the shares of the Bank of Canada, and he could literally walk in there into that boardroom and say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, it's been a slice, but we're going to be doing that now. We're going to be printing our own money for Canadians. And if you think that's a crazy idea, this was done. That's why the Bank of Canada was brought into being, was to create money for the government at 0% interest to be spent into circulation through infrastructure projects. And God alone knows we have enough infrastructure projects to keep us going for a couple of lifetimes. And because the national debt is actually unpayable, you know, that makes that a criminal debt. You cannot create a debt that cannot be paid. And as we can see by the ever increasing national debt and provincial debt, that it will never be paid off. We're $1 trillion in debt at the federal level and nearly half a trillion dollars at the provincial level. That's never going to be paid. With an aging population and a shrinking group of millennials coming up behind them, it's never going to be paid. So we're going to be subjected to shrinkflation and inflation until somebody actually truly addresses this problem. Okay, next story. Trudeau loses a key provincial ally as PC win suggests possible Tory tide in 2019. And of course, they're talking about the recent Ontario election in which Doug Ford won 76 seats, a very strong majority, and literally trounced the Liberals. The Liberals went down to 7 seats and lost party status. And the federal government is very worried about this because we have a radio show here on CBC Radio, and it's called Cross Country Checkup. And the question this last Sunday, yesterday, was, is there a big red tide rolling across Canada? And because you get phone calls coming in from basically every province, and the phone calls are unscreened, you get a good handle on what the feeling of the population is. And we have a Conservative government in Alberta. Jason Kenney is the head of that, and there is a lot of concern and discontent with the NDP party, the New Democratic Party under Rachel Notley. So there is a good chance that Alberta is going to go red in its next election, and so that would basically give you 3 provinces which are against the carbon tax: Saskatchewan, Brad Wall, Alberta with Jason Kenney, and Ontario. And Ontario is the most populous province in Canada. So this would be a formidable sticking point. If those 3 provinces didn't want to have a carbon tax, you might find other provinces changing their mind, especially Quebec and BC, who have installed a carbon tax. But anyway, this win, this red tide across the world, is scaring the bejesus out of the globalists, and so it should. Now remember, these elections are a reaction, and if we fail to understand what caused that reaction, then we're going to see this kind of situation happen over and over again. Okay? There is no doubt about it. As Bill Clinton said, the Democrats and the Liberals have really failed to reach out and make contact with the average working person. Same with the Wynne government. They did a lot of cutting, and they did a lot of cutting that really hurt the average working person. Even though they raised the minimum wage, there was a lot of medical cuts to OHIP, this kind of stuff, and insurance, and there was a lot of problems. Hydro, energy costs, this all really affected the lower income people, because energy is something that you have to purchase, and I think a lot of working people really felt that was thumbing their nose at them. And so until the Liberals realised this kind of stuff, Justin Trudeau was supposed to end first past the post elections and bring in some kind of proportional representation. Didn't do it. This was a big promise, Justin, and you have basically fallen to the ground on this, and the outcome of our provincial election would have been completely different if we had had proportional representation. It would have been a lot more balanced amongst all three parties. Yes, it may have been a minority government, but at least every person voting would have felt that their vote counted. Okay, so last story. Hard to be friends with a social justice warrior. And this is a letter to Dear Amy Dickinson. And I thought it was kind of interesting because, some of these letters and the response are very telling about situations in our society and relationships that are taking place in our society today. Dear Amy, I am a male with a female co-worker, Danica. I like Danica. We have a similar sense of humour, and I get the sense she wants to be better friends. However, she has a strong and unwarranted tendency to see injustice, racism, sexism, and homophobia in innocuous interactions. For example, once outside of work, I innocently inquired as to whether she was happy in her life, and she viewed this as a sexist and patriarchal question that basically reduced her to a damsel in distress. However, as I explained to her, this is something I ask my friends of all genders. I feel like we could be really good friends, except I feel she sees innocuous events through the lens of what some people might describe as a social justice warrior, frustrated friend. And this is Amy's reply. Dear Frustrated, while I'm tempted to advise you to say, "Oh Danica, you're so cute when you're angry," I don't think I can help you to best this social justice warrior, because no matter how you respond, she can always accuse you of using your privilege to dominate her. So query her about her own intolerance. She needs to be given the opportunity to exercise the kind of tolerance that she would no doubt champion in a different context. The next time she shuts you down, you could ask her, "Danica, are you willing to try to be more tolerant towards a viewpoint that doesn't always align perfectly with yours?" So there you go. That is what it's like for many people trying to engage in a relationship with a social justice warrior. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed some of the things that I found in the news, and if you did, please like and subscribe below. And so this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, and we will talk to you real soon. You take care now. Have a great week. See ya. Bye.